the bushes in front of our house that had been left there. So we took them in, and also a friend of ours drove up and said, "We're moving to Portland, want our van," and gave us their van. So all that happened in this one day.
One day. It was
Yes.
auspicious.
And yesterday was the day our cat, one of these cats was
Who's now
introduced to a pit bull.
6.5 years old.
And I saved it, but I did injure myself, so I'm plain injured today. So just so you know.
So I like the aw.
So this is for both Amalia and for Woody too. And this is a sing-along, so follow the bouncing Krista. Night in the desert, no comfort inside. I'm by myself, but I know I'm not alone. I reach through the darkness and I pull on your light and I let it wash right over me, right over me. It's pouring down, lifting my heart, turning me all around, right over me. Oh, hallelujah. Now let it wash right over me. And I walk down this long road of family and friends. Come to a place that I've never seen before. Think on the love of all that's brought me here, and I let it wash right over me, right over me. It's pouring down, lifting my heart, turning me all around, right over me. Oh, hallelujah. Now let it wash right over me. Deep in the darkness, no light do I know, but I hear a small voice. It's starting to grow. And like a river reaching the sea, I let it wash right over me. Yes, I do. Right over me.
Right over me.
It's pouring down.
It's pouring down.
Lifting my heart.
Lifting my heart.
Turning me all around. Right over me.
Right over me.
Oh, hallelujah.
Oh, hallelujah.
I let it wash right over me. Yes, I do. Right over me.
Right over me.
It's pouring down.
It's pouring down.
Lifting my heart.
Lifting my heart.
Turning me all around. Right over me.
Right over me.
Oh, hallelujah.
Oh, hallelujah.
I let it wash right over me. Yes, I do. I let it wash right over me. Through and through, I let it wash right over me.
So I have a question for you. What's the difference between unlawful and illegal? The difference between unlawful and illegal. Something that is unlawful is against the law. Something that is illegal is a sick bird. What in the world does that have to do with spirituality, you might ask? That is the joke that got Miss Reba McEntire booed off stage in the late 1970s. Have you ever noticed that with our heroes, with the people that we consider celebrities, it's not so much that I want to know how many honorary doctoral degrees they have. I want to know what their pet name for their first kid was. Presidents and presidential hopefuls kiss babies because it's a great photo op. They're also adorable. And it must be like the one person who doesn't crush their hand shaking it while they're on the campaign trail. We want the intimate moments with our heroes, yes? Many of us. If you're crushing on someone as a teenager, and some of us remember being teenagers, if you were crushing on someone, what was important was to know their middle name and like how they were doing in their love life that week. Not, their vocal range or their stats as a whatever player. There is something about knowing personal details and knowing someone intimately that our soul craves. And that craving is for true intimacy, not the fake stuff, not what passes for intimacy sometimes these days, which is the hookup culture, or basically idolizing people we will never meet and never have to argue about who gets the last of the coffee with. It's really easy to see other people as perfect when you don't have to interact with them as humans, right? One of the challenges I have right now is knowing that we're being recorded and wanting to interact with the people on YouTube. Hi, guys. And feeling like there's kind of a separation between us. That's all in my mind. But that wanting to have that intimate relationship. When I say intimate, the words I'm actually thinking are with intimacy is actually into me you see. You guys heard that one? Into me you see. That is true intimacy. And as we develop our inner life, which is the name of this talk, developing our inner life requires that we find a way to stop distracting ourselves with outside stuff and finding a way to become intimate with who we really are. Now, think about the people that you have been emotionally intimate with in your lives. Were you able to get emotionally intimate with those people because you were the first one to point out when they screwed up? Maybe you pulled them off to the side and said, hey, your fly's down. Or your tag is sticking out. But these were when we become intimate, there's a vulnerability that happens that needs to be honored. And so I would ask you to consider that as you become intimate with your own self, let go of any teaching that has told you that your ego or small s self is just bad. The person that you are, no matter what judgments you have about it, no matter what persona you put on for the world, that person is part of you. And because it's part of you, it's part of God. If God is an infinite being, who else are you going to be? There's nowhere else to go. So we spend a lot of time figuring out what's going on behind our own eyes, what's going on in our own subconscious and in our own beliefs. That's just part of how we do spiritual practice. And sometimes it's fun and sometimes not so much. But have you ever had somebody who had obviously not done their consciousness work that was coming to you out of fear and had them try to convert you to their religion? Whether it was the religion of a certain football team, where that's what, I root for the umps in every, sport, because I don't know. Sometimes I root for the football. Yay, I made all the scores. Some people, it's like football is their religion. For some people, it's a certain business is their religion. For some people, their religion is their religion. But if they're coming to you out of fear and, God forbid, self-hate, it has a nah to it, doesn't it? For you if you're trying to do this on closed captioning YouTube people, nah, I don't know how it's spelled. Ernest Holmes once was talking about how we present as religious scientists in the world. And what he wrote was, you will never discover a person who is full of emotional judgment and condemnation of others, who is doing anything other than unconsciously releasing the tension of a burden so great to be borne that he doesn't even permit it to come to the light of day to be seen, for he could not face it. When we experience somebody who is coming from their fear and, as I said, God forbid, self-loathing, we can feel it, can't we? The stuff that gets projected onto us doesn't feel like ours. It's very easy to judge people when they are being like that, right? I mean, I'm an expert. That's my other master's degree, is judginess. It's even harder not to go to judgment when it's you, right? Oh, I heard a I thought it was one of those really low, growly ones. Yesterday we had a workshop here on, I called it Peopling with Joy. Perhaps I should have named it something else because nobody had any clue what the heck I was talking about. So we had this workshop and we talked about personality types and how to meet people where they are based on their personality types. How to understand our own needs based on our personality types. Oddly enough, it's one of the things that I teach that I always get really powerful feedback on. It's a simple little 4-type personality type. It's about as easy as it gets. I think the only easier thing is, are you introvert or extrovert? And on a spectrum, are you more introverted or extroverted? And yet understanding these things is a way of looking into our own hearts and a way of being intimate with who we are. So when I found out, when I read the book Quiet, and I recognized that believe it or not, I'm an introvert. I'm a pretty extreme introvert. And people are generally like, no. There's no way. If she was an introvert, she wouldn't be on a stage, would she? Yes, I would. Apparently. An introvert does not mean shy, as you can see. An introvert is someone who gets energy by being alone, that needs to go back into their own insides and pick up the energy and then spend it on being with other people. An extrovert is somebody who gains energy by being around other people. And when I read that book and read that definition, it made a lot more sense to me, and I got off my own back about the fact that I will use one of my 2 days off per week sleeping. I spend a lot of time with people. My body needs to rest. If you are an introvert that has been picking on yourself about needing naps, stop it. There you go. All fixed. If you are an extrovert and wonder if there's something wrong with you because you can't be alone, and a silent retreat is your version of hell. We were required to go on silent retreats of at least 2 to 3 days in order to graduate from ministerial school. And some people were like, ah! And some of us were like, yes, that's awesome. It's not about whether you're doing it right. It's about what works for you. And you will not know what works for you unless you're willing to meet you where you are. I can't remember if it was Thomas More or Parker Palmer that talked about the soul is like a deer in the woods. If you go chasing after it, it's going to run away. But if you will sit quietly, not make any threatening gestures, just sit there, it will, out of trust and love, come and meet you where you are. This is what we're asking us to do this week. Miguel de Cervantes said, "Make it thy business to know thyself, which is the most difficult lesson in the world." I think it's only difficult because we are so trained, geared, built, I don't know. For some reason, we spend a lot of time on outside stuff. It kind of makes sense, actually, if you think about it. All the T-Rexes were outside. Philosophers didn't have much use in the days when you were being chased by dinosaurs. Even today, I can't tell you how I got to a certain number, but I can tell you how I feel about it. Which one is going to be of more use to you if you're trying to get a loan? Which one is, the philosophy thing creates a rich inner life. And we are blessed in that we have the time and the space to create that for ourselves. We're not, constantly running from stegosauri or whatever. So how do we get to know who we are? Socrates tells us to find yourself, think for yourself. Rule number 1 in finding yourself: it will not be the self your mother put together for you, or your high school career counselor. It will not be the self necessarily whose sole purpose is to serve and make comfortable the people you have always served and made comfortable. In order to be your true self, you have to be okay with other people maybe having an opinion about who you really are, and perhaps trying to shove you back into the person they've known. If you have people like that, that's fantastic. It means someone loves you. It means somebody is caring enough to want to maintain their relationship with you, no matter what it costs you. Wait a minute. There are many ways of finding out who we are. There are many ways of getting to that gut self-definition. In a book called No Boundary that I discovered way back in undergrad when I was living in Vermont, I'll never forget, I was in one of those old-fashioned picturesque libraries with the old-fashioned picturesque, but oh my God, they hurt after a while, wooden chairs. And I remember sitting up straight up in my seat at dark 30 or whatever it was, reading this book and going, oh my God, that's it. He talks about how, for most Americans, our self, not self line, that place where we say, this is me, this is not me, it exists from about here up. Americans tend to be all up in their heads, yes? Eventually, we might make the incredible hero's journey down to about here for our hearts. And so the self, not self, isn't just what we think, it's what we feel. After that, if we decide to be really brave, we might go live in our bodies. We become people who live all the way from our toes to the top of our heads. And our physical body becomes that which we are. It becomes much harder to live on Ben and Jerry's when you respect and value your body as part of you. It can be done. Just saying. I bet you somebody watching this right now is eating Ben and Jerry's. Understand, that too is a spiritual principle. Once we get all the way out to our skin, the self, not self boundary can sometimes move to our tribe, where if you mess with my sister, you have now messed with me, and God help you. I can pick on her, but you can't. It then goes out to our community, and eventually what you get to is the cosmic consciousness, where everything is part of you. It's part of the great oneness, and that is what most of us are working toward as spiritual beings. It's the Christ consciousness. It's our Buddha nature in full form. It is Brahmanatman. It is becoming the avatar of the one mind. Nirvana, heaven. We have lots of reasons to go there, and we have lots of names for whatever it is. Most of the mystics have said, according to Ernest Holmes, the mystics have all taught the same thing, that we're all on a journey of self-discovery, that all roads lead to what Holmes called the Father's house. Think heaven, think nirvana. And the third thing is that we're all going to get there. Probably about 3 seconds after we realize we're already there. You are already divine. You don't need to earn it. We let it wash down over us, as the first song said. As we do after the prayer at the end of this talk, we'll use our physical emotions to remind us all the way down to a cell level that we let it wash over us. We don't earn it. You couldn't earn it. How do you earn heaven? Thank God we don't have to. So what we try and do here is let go of the judgment, let go of the busyness and all the distractions, and get comfortable with what's in here, with who we really are. You will not be able to heal something you cannot name. I would suggest you also can't truly appreciate something you're trying not to see. Often spiritual work in my head looks a lot like, have you ever seen someone about this big learn to play hide and seek? Dogs and horses do this too. They'll go stand behind a tree with their butts sticking out. And they think, because they can't see you, you can't see them. I used to, when I wanted to sing, I would go off like around a corner so that nobody could see me. Because as a soprano, you have to sing really loud. And sometimes I hit a note, and sometimes I just hurt myself. But in order to sing full-throated, I could not have anyone who could see me. Now, it took me years to figure out, Kathleen, just because they can't see you doesn't mean they can't hear you. I'm sure that I warbled very, very loudly. And people were like, oh God, she's doing it again. We all have those things that are beautiful about us that we try to hide. We also have things about us that we don't want our minister or our mother to know about, yes? That is actually the blurb for a class I'll be teaching at Asilomar this year. I'm also going to be teaching it on Saturday before Easter. And if there was ever a better time to look at your own shadow, it's when you are metaphysically stuck behind in the tomb anyway. So if there's anything you're really willing to resurrect yourself as free from, that would be a good class. It's the Saturday right before Easter. The Dalai Lama says we can never obtain peace in the world if we forget the inner world and don't make peace with ourselves. It's another great reason to learn who you are and become your own best friend. We will never see world peace until we are willing to see inner peace. And if we are, each and every one of us, the Dalai Lama also talks about personal responsibility. Sound familiar? It's the individual responsibility for our own thoughts, our own lives, and our own actions that lead us to a place of being able to have power out in the world. You have to figure out what that looks like for you. But what happens when we do it? According to Holmes, who talked about this as part of his Sermon by the Sea, he said, "Find me one person who no longer has any fear of the universe or of God." Ever had somebody look at you and say, "We've got to talk"? Does that ever go well? Have you ever had your boss bring you into the office and say, "Shut the door"? And gone, "Oh, squee! They want to tell me how awesome I am. Oh, God. When I was supervising an office, I used to bring my employees in and do regular check-ins with them so that they could have the experience of going into the supervisor's office, shutting the door, and just being asked how they're doing and what else they might need. Now, I still get that feeling sometimes. It's getting better. It does get better. But if you can resolve that fear of what's out there, of the divine being that you may or may not really want to consider sending into retirement, find me one person who no longer has any fear of the universe or of God or of man or of anything else, and you will have brought to me someone in whose presence we may sit, and fear shall vanish as clouds before the sunlight. Find me someone who has redeemed his own soul, and he shall become my redeemer. There's something about those people who truly love themselves and are at peace with themselves, right? I mean, we know them when we meet them. They have that laugh, like the Dalai Lama's giggle. They have that sense of peace around them. One of the reasons I love coming to hear Swami Shankarananda speak is because without saying a word, he invites in that kind of emotional and spiritual intimacy. He taught us last week that he teaches the Upanishads sometimes. And Upanishad means come closer. That's what that word means. Those are the sacred scriptures of one of the Hindu paths. And it means come closer. So what if there is a divine being that wants you to come closer? That wants absolute, pure, and perfect intimacy with you? Are we willing to do the work of letting ourselves be washed in love, be washed in grace, without earning it? Are we willing to be seen just as we are and just as we are not, in all of our glory and our great big mess? If you are willing to do that, I would suggest to you that your life has great possibility. One of my favorite Holmes quotes is, "When we learn to trust the universe, we shall be happy, prosperous, and well." And so we're going to call in that wellness and that prosperity now.